So bye bye, Miss American Pie. Drove my Chevy to.
Shh. Hello and welcome to the Everyone Has a Story podcast. Joining me today is Carl and Linda Cadwell. Welcome, you guys. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Roger, for putting us on, even considering having an opportunity to speak with you. It's always a pleasure.
Hey, well, thank you for that. Carl and I go back. I don't know if Carl even remembers this, but back when I was probably 21 or 22 years old, at the tennis club that he owned at that time, he was interviewing for a head pro position, and I interviewed with Carl back when I was 21 or 22 years old. And I knew I didn't really have all the experience needed to become that head tennis pro at that time. But when I left that interview, I told myself, when I grow up, I want to be Carl Cadwell. This guy made me feel so good, even though I knew I was not going to get the job. I knew that he just made me feel good. And then about 20 years later, I have the opportunity to become his business partner, and I scooped that up. I did whatever I could to make that happen because I just wanted to be part of the Carl Cadwell family of just business people. And when you get to know Carl and Linda, you're going to find what amazing people these people are. And what I really want to just recognize right now, and we'll get into this in a little bit, but Carl and Linda just celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. So congratulations on that as well.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So
you're creeping up on us, so you're to be congratulated too. I think it's 33 for you, isn't it?
Yep, 33. So I have 17 more years. You're going to be the first person I call to say, Carl, Linda, I made it.
I'll still be here.
I know you will. I know you will. Now let's get down to the good stuff, talking to Linda and Carl. Carl, Linda, tell us a little bit about yourselves. Give us a history.
Go ahead, Linda.
Oh my gosh. You always go first. No, go ahead. I'll fill in.
Oh, way back when, we met over a plate of spilled spaghetti when I was a dental student at the University of Washington. She was a dental hygienist, and it kind of grew from there. And eventually she asked me to marry her. And
which is true.
Which is true. And I said yes. And that was 50 some years ago. And so I'm a dentist by training, but I only practiced for about 10 years. And I got so enthralled with basically, I really didn't understand. I really was an entrepreneur. And we started, I don't know how many businesses. We still have about 6 active businesses now. We have 4 kids. None of them live here, dang, because they have grandkids. And so we have to go visit, Minneapolis and Phoenix and Bend, Oregon, and all these great places to visit our grandkids now. But life is still awesome. And we just love to live life to the fullest because I think that's what we've been called to.
Absolutely. And what's great about all the kids being not in the Tri-State area where you guys live, you have your own jet that you can personally pilot to get to all these places without having to go through the rigmarole of TSA and all the other things that you go through with the public and private jets. So nice job there. So you guys, to me, the reason why you're here today is because you're what I consider a power couple, and you guys really know your roles. And that's really, I think, what's really great about the two of you is that you might not be working side by side within the business, but you guys support each other probably as well, if not better than anybody else I've ever met in my life. And I've met a lot of couples. I've met a lot of great couples, but you guys are, to me, up on that upper echelon just because of how you've made it work. And that's really what I want to talk about today in this podcast is really, how did you guys really make this work? So, the first question, I'm going to start with Linda here. What has been what you would call your recipe for success in both your business and personal lives?
First of all, I think our first and foremost secret is that we're both Christ followers. We have always, we were before we met, and he's the center of our lives and our marriage. And so we each, I believe, have a servant's heart. So when you have a servant's heart, you you care for the other. And that's what we do. We don't really define any specific roles in our marriage. I mean, if something needs to be done, we just pitch in and do it. And I mean, there's certain things obviously I can't do. I can't fix electrical or whatever, he does that, but I'll do other things I can do and he can't do. But for the most part, dishes wise, laundry wise, we just pitch in and we don't say, hey, you do it, because it's not my job.
I think one of the keys, it was very clear that I was going to run businesses, and I hired great people to run businesses. But the thing that I learned really early in running the businesses is when I came home from it, I left the business at the business and I didn't bring it home with me. Now, that doesn't mean once in a while I didn't get sucked out on a trip out of town or things like that. But basically, I could make that clear cut and come home. So we had that opportunity to be with each other, and she didn't have to be with my business, if you would. But she is such a great supporter of everything that I do, because it takes way more than just running a business to keep everything else in your life together, like at home. And so she manages all of our home finances. She takes care of all of our income tax stuff. She takes care of all of these, I'm going to call them details, that she loves to do, that makes our life run smoothly here at home. Yep. And so when you have that kind of relationship in a partner called your wife, then things just run smoothly. So that, I had an old sage that says, there's only two critical decisions in life, and the rest of them are just foo-foo. The first one is, are you going to commit your life and be a disciple of Christ or not? And the other is, who are you going to marry? Well, I got both of those right way back when, and that's been a huge part of our success. And when you have that kind of success, what you have to do is you have to make sure that you're very clear on your communications, and not that we don't fumble that. You have to be very clear that you're celebrating all the time, and you have to be very clear that you're, what's my other one? Oh, that you have that commitment to each other that just doesn't end. So I'm committed to her, she's committed to me, and together that's a great way to live life.
And I know that you told me when we were preparing for this podcast that you believe that your roles to each other is your helpmate. Explain what that means.
Well, I don't know if I can explain it exactly. We allow each other to be who we are, and we support that. And I guess that's being a helpmate. And we understand our love language. I understand how he feels loved, and he understands how I feel loved. And it took us a while to figure that out, but but yeah, I think that's what it means to be a helpmate to me anyway. I mean,
yeah, Scripture is really clear. The Lord just says, when he's talking to Adam in the garden, he says, I'm going to make for you somebody that's going to meet all your needs. It's called a helpmate. And Linda and I are very opposite personalities. I'm much more extroverted. She's way more introverted. I like to be in charge of things, and I like to influence people. She likes to take care of details and make sure everybody's happy. But if you do the profile, an emotional profile of us, you'll find that we are just absolute opposites that came together. So it's the old opposites attract, and certainly that's what happened in our case. But it also makes us complete because we have all the bases covered. What I cover, she doesn't, and what she covers, I don't have to, which is pretty awesome.
Absolutely. And without the entanglement of ill feelings sometimes with that happens. And I love that, Carl, you told me that she does everything that you don't like to do. And to me, or to you, you said, that's awesome. I love that spirit.
Yeah.
I wish more people in their personal lives and their professional lives can really just accept that about each other, that, you know what, if you know that your partner can't do things right or do them well, step in if that's your strength and do it, and let you go on to your other tasks. You're the business person. She's the one that takes care of the home and all the home finances. I just love that. So now,
So let me expand it a little bit. You know, the house I came from, my dad paid all the bills, took
Yep.
care of all the financing, made all the money, and controlled it. Okay, I had a great family. Don't take that as a negative. So when I got married, it was my assumption I was supposed to be doing these things, and quite frankly, I didn't like doing them, but she loves to do them. And what a winner that is! I'm going, wow! I just hit the jackpot, won the
Absolutely.
lotto on that one.
you know, and with that kind of attitude and togetherness, that's why you made it 50 years. And if you could live another 50 years, you'd probably be celebrating a 100-year anniversary. So nice job there. But now in reality of things, both at work and at home, you know, there is some form of accountability that needs to take place. What does that look like with the Cadwell family?
Wow, accountability. That usually has negative connotations. Often can have negative connotations. That means that you're kind of in our business world. We obviously hold people accountable. We say, okay, this is what we're going to get done this week. And then you follow up and you see that it was done. So you inspect what you expect and you make those expectations known, and you know you're going to inspect that. We don't live our family life that way. So I don't bring that kind of, gosh, here's what we're going to do. And, you know, I'm going to check up on you next week. But we don't have to have that accountability. That's that negative kind of thing. What we have to do is have the accountability that we're living our life to the purpose that we've been called. Okay. And I'm responsible for making her so that she can live the life that she has been called to. And she's responsible to me to make sure that I'm free to live the life that God has called us to. Okay. And that's very different than the kind of business accountability that most people think of. And so, yeah, we have that kind of accountability, but it's how do I make that person really thrive in what their purpose and what their meaning in life is? Now, with our kids, you know, kids are different. You got to hold them accountable. You got to teach them responsibility. You know, you got to help mold them. You got to make sure their spirits are growing all the time. And they, you know, our goal is that they all love the Lord, you know, and we're 3 out of 4. That's pretty good for today. And we think the 4th one's coming around, but you know, you can't tell. You know, I'm not in charge and I don't judge, but so you know that's the kind of thing. But your kids, you need to hold accountable. You know, and we always had some fun things to do as a family, and all the time. And so we had what we called FFF, and that was called. And this especially works in the kind of the teen years when they say, "Oh, I don't want to go do that." And we just said, no, it's FFF, and that's forced family fun. Okay. And not everything was forced family fun, but we made sure that they knew that, no, you're expected to go on this one and you're going to be there and you're going to have a great attitude. And it took, you know, they use it on their own kids now. You know, no, this is FFF. Yeah. We're doing this.
Yeah. Roger, I think part of accountability too is that we're totally transparent with each other, and we don't hold any secrets. You know, if we have any questions, we bring them up. You know, and so that makes it easier too to be accountable.
Yeah, you know, and so Carl, let's go back now to the workplace, because you mentioned you do hold your kids accountable when they were living under your roof. What does that look like in comparison to your employees in your key personnel at the Cadwell Labs?
Okay, so I have a bunch of businesses, right? But I have great managers running them all. I have Vibrogenics, which is a relatively new company that is a whole body vibration. We have 5 employees there. And so that looks very different than Cadwell Laboratories, which is all over the world. It's a neurodiagnostic company my brother and I started, and has a couple hundred employees plus distributors in 44 different countries. So and then we have a couple of clubs, a couple of health clubs. You know, you're very familiar with the one. And that has, well, it used to have twice as many employees as it does now, but COVID did a nice job of making sure we had half as many employees as before and half as many people coming. But anyway, that's a whole nother challenge. So with each one, it's different, okay? At the smaller one, like in Vibrogenics, that's an exciting company that's hard to get the message out on. So there, I am very active down in, I would call the details of what it takes to do the marketing, the finance, building equipment, designing equipment. So I'm really very, very hands-on and in there. Somebody might accuse me of being micromanaged, although I don't micromanage. I'm not a micromanager. We just, every day we have a quick meeting. We say, what are we going to get done today? We report back the next day. Okay. Cadwell Laboratory is very different, with a couple hundred employees spread all over everywhere, and in foreign countries as well as the US. And there I have great managers, but I don't micromanage anybody. There we have high level things that we're going to get done, and we set those rocks, we call them rocks, and we know that we want to bust those rocks, and we want to do them every quarter. And so we have rocks, and we assign those out to every group has their own rocks, and they report back at the end of the quarter how they're doing on busting rocks, because they're the things that make the huge difference in what those businesses are doing. So depending upon what I'm doing or what the company is doing, really varies, but I'm not a micromanager. I'm just not. And that's a very limiting kind of thing if you want to have multiple companies and hundreds of employees. You just can't micromanage everything.
Absolutely. And accountability does not always necessitate micromanaging, but it always seems to come with it, doesn't it? When you talk about accountability, the first thing people think about is micromanaging, and it can be done without having to be a micromanager.
Oh, absolutely.
So, but everything that you just talked about, both in your marriage, your family, and the work, it all really starts when you talk about your 3 C's of communication. So really, how did you guys develop what I'm going to call your necessary line of communication?
There were some really helpful things. You want to talk about this, Linda?
No, go ahead.
I keep wandering at the mouth here because I'm more the extrovert.
I'll throw in something if I think I need to.
So part of what we did is when we first started having kids, it says, how do you raise kids? And we were going to a church, and we just said, another family friend of ours says, we're all asking these same questions. In fact, there was a whole bunch of us asking the same questions because we're all about the same age. And so these really good friends of ours and ourselves, we decided we're just going to teach classes on how to do this. We had no clue how to do this, right? So we started reading scripture and reading books of how to do this. And so that was kind of, I would say, our mentoring, if you would, was really for those couple of things. And we did that for years. And we'd have 100 adults in class every Sunday, and supporting, how do you get through teens? How do you get through preteens? How do you get through, the toddler stage? And we just kind of walked, because we're all about the same age, we just kind of walked through this whole time. But there were some really significant changes for us. One is we figured they came out with the love languages. And that was really key to us, is that we were using our love languages inappropriately. In other words, my love language is very different than Linda's. And so when I wanted to tell her I loved her, I would use my love language on her instead of using her love language for her, and vice versa. And I'll give you an example. I go to Costco and I buy flowers for her just for no reason. And they just show up and hand them to her, because that's her love language, is just to be remembered in small gifts and words of praise or little cards or everything. Okay. And that's her love language. And she goes, oh my gosh, I just love this, So, but she will send me a little card or something, as her love language, but it meant nothing to me, nothing. Just give me a hug. I'll be really happy,
Yeah. So I quit sending them cards.
Yeah. So stop sending me cards. I need to send her. So we learned that. The second thing we did is we learned that we have different needs. And I'm sorry, my phone is buzzing here, and I'm going to turn this off. And we had really different needs. And there's a book called His Needs, Her Needs. And we worked through that as a couple. And it has 5 of the guys' typical needs and 5 of the ladies' typical needs, the wife's typical needs. And when we worked through that, we started to really understand what they needed, from the other side, so we could be much better at providing that to them. So those are kind of some of when we look back, kind of the things that really made our relationship, spin even better, so it gave us tools to work with. I'm going to head off this weekend or tomorrow in the plane, and it's a business trip, and I got to go down, actually going to Phoenix, where one of our kids and grandkids live, And I said, Linda, do you want to go? And she said, I'm just too busy. I just can't go. It just came up today that I had to go tomorrow. And so she says, no, I can't go. But then you have to ask, okay, how important is it to me? And so we came up with a scale. It's called 1 to 10. Okay. 1 means it doesn't matter whether you go or not. It makes no difference. It's just there. Number 10, if you call it 10, means if you go, I'm going to murder you. Okay. That kind of scale. So, I have a hardest time telling how important it is. So I just will ask her ever so often, says, well, tell me on a scale of 1 to 10, how important this is. Now she says 2 or 3, we know it's not a big deal. She says, well, this is 5 or 6 or 7. I better start paying really attention to it. But I don't intuitively know that of her. Okay. Yep. Women are much more intuitive than guys are. So we kind of had to come up with these things to help facilitate our communication. Am I talking too much?
No, I love that. I love that scale.
Well, in that example of him going tomorrow, I had a really hard time making the decision. I needed to stay home because I've got a lot of work to do here at home. But I really was conflicted because I know it's important for him that I do things with him. And so we had to talk about that. And it gave me a lot of relief to know that on a scale of 1 to 10, it wasn't a huge thing, So now I'm more at ease because I know where it is on his scale. So
and that's probably the most powerful thing about that is that once you guys determine what number it is, and you've already agreed on the terms of each number, that it will put you at ease. And sometimes that being not at ease, being a little bit stressed out, can start to really weigh on you, and it starts to get deeper and deeper and heavier before all of a sudden you have a blowout. But if you have those prearranged agreements in a fun way and in a married way, that you guys realize, okay, yeah, it's a 2 or 3. So it takes all the pressure off you, Linda, not to feel guilty or anything like that, to where all of a sudden now you go to bed almost upset because you're feeling guilty or something like that. I just love that. And maybe we should try to put that kind of language into the workforce and that scale of 1 to 10 and see how that works when you're dealing with your employees and sometimes maybe with your customers. But I know, Carl, you've talked about in the past about your life sharing group. Do you want to kind of share that with us?
The what group? I'm sorry.
Our love group.
Our love group?
Yeah.
Life sharing group.
Life sharing group?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. To do that. I kind of head it up, but she heads it up with me. And
well, we get together once a week, and we've had life groups on and off for a long time. But our current one is particularly, it's great because we've come to a level of sharing whatever we need to share, and we trust one another. We know it stays there, and it's just an awesome way to get together once a week with those special people in your life and talk to them, get to know what's going on in their lives. And then if any of us has a need for help, everybody pitches in and helps. Like we had a need to clear out Carl's brother's home just so it could be renovated and stuff, and everybody pitched in, and it was a busy day. We hauled out a lot of stuff, and just things like that. If somebody's moving and one person in the group moved, so the rest of them got together and helped move the stuff. So it's a pretty special group.
Yeah, it's through our church, but they call them life groups at church, but ours is really a love group because we just love each other so much, and we want to take care and watch over. We share our hurts and we share our joys, and they're free to come and do that. And we pray for them, and we study scripture. We usually study a book, and sometimes it's on TV or on a video, I should say, a DVD. And so we take some of the great, Christian leaders that have some great insights, and sometimes they're not even pastors. If you haven't listened to Love Does by Bob Goff, he's a lawyer, but he talks so much about, well, this is what love does. This is what love looks like. And you go, oh my gosh, yeah, he's right. I'm still not going to Afghanistan.
No.
Yep.
Which he did.
Oh, really?
To start a girls' school.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. That's powerful stuff. And I know that you've always kind of concluded that conversation about your your life group with everybody needs a grandpa and a grandma.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's every life group needs to have a grandpa and a grandma in it.
And here we are.
Yeah, we're the ones that and it's amazing. They all just, when you speak, they just kind of really listen up because they know we've been through the slog of life, and they know that we have some insights that they haven't come across yet. And our life group is made up of couples that have been together their whole life. It's made up of couples that are divorced and remarried. It's made up of a couple that's just starting to go together after both had ugly divorces, and they're recovering from that. And so it's not like, oh, these are all just, married for 30 years kind of couples, with everything is going great. No, these are people that have slugged through life, and, they're really coming out on the other end. And how do you just make a victorious life, because we all have value. Every one of us has value. And so many people lose that track, especially in the really hard times, and like divorce is one of the most devaluing things there is, and to help a person come out of the hole. We had one guy draw a picture, and he says, draw a picture where you're going in your life. He drew a picture of himself down in a hole. Okay. And he just barely starting to climb out of the hole, but he saw on the other end, here was a cabin in the woods, and here was a horse, and there was a woman down the road somewhere, but he still saw himself that way down a hole. But it's so helpful to understand that, so you can really step alongside and really come along and just love those people.
Well, he had a picture of somebody, one of us, pulling him out of the
That's
hole,
right.
too.
It was our love group reaching down and pulling him up out of the hole. That's right. Thank you.
Yeah, I love it. So I know that you guys, one thing that's kept you together for the last 50 plus years is that you guys like to play together, especially on the ski slopes. And so, that's a big part of life just in general. But to use that metaphor, you've always said that when you go down the ski slope, you're never going in a straight line. And so with everything that we do in life, marriage, work, whatever, business, owning a business, there's always going to be an obstacle, or what we're going to call today a mogul. So how do you guys overcome some of these moguls that you have been presented?
Yeah, everybody thinks that, God, here's a successful business guy or whatever, successful in life of anything. They say, oh, there's a goal right down there at the bottom of the hill. And they just pointed their skis straight downhill and went forward, and that's where they landed. That's just not the way life works.
Yeah.
If you're going down a steep hill for your goal, you're making one turn after another, and you're going around moguls and bumps and missing rocks and debris, and other people are getting in your way and everything else. And you've got to be able to get down that hill. And so how do we do that is the question you're asking. And the way you do that is you continually communicate what the bumps are, so that you can, as a group in a business, you can work through them. As a couple, you can say, what are the bumps that you're hitting? And you can always have it that, we've had 45 wonderful years of marriage in the last 50 years. And that's because 90% of the time it's really wonderful, or 95%. I can't do the math right now. Anyway, but there are times when we just have to really work at it, because there's a bunch of bumps that we've got to negotiate. But that's where you have to be open, and you have to be honest. You have to communicate. You have to celebrate your victories, and that's just part of what happens. But if you think our life is always just a straight downhill cruise, you just don't live in our house.
Well, and our businesses too.
Yeah. We about lost one of our big businesses from a fraud thing, and that's about 25 years ago. We had the collectors in to take over the business, and I was just paralyzed. I think the word is angst, where you just cannot move. And I'd sit there at my desk and I just stare at the wall. And finally, I just surrendered. I says, God, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I don't know how to do this. And so I just stared at the wall, and I just got this kind of message back. Says, okay, God, I got it. If you want us to, if I'm going to lose this company, this is the medical company, it's okay, because I know you have something better for me. Now, it turns out that he didn't want us to lose it, but we created a much better company from that. Okay. And I think that's, the Lord guiding us in the process. So we can go on and tell more stories about that too, but maybe that's another day.
That was a huge mogul though.
That was
Yeah. Yeah,
That was like slamming into a wall.
yeah. But I love that part where you just said, okay, enough is enough, and you just surrendered to the Lord. I mean,
Yeah.
that's powerful, and we all should do that more often than what we do. So
Yeah.
I appreciate your honesty there. So
And I'm not one that has very much anxiety. Okay.
yeah,
So
no, you've always
when
been
people
that.
are very anxious, I have a little hard time having great sympathy for them. I have empathy, but that was a time when I was in unbelievable angst, I think
Yeah.
is the right word.
Yeah, yeah, and more power to you. So in closing, give some final advice to the listeners on really what makes a special power couple like you guys.
3 C's.
Go ahead. Linda's going to tell us.
The 3 C's: celebrate, communicate, and commitment. And I think commitment is huge, because I don't think commitment is honored as much these days as it used to be. And it's very, very important to hang in there for 50 years. You have to have commitment. So
Absolutely.
Pastor Ted Cunningham is in Nashville, and he has some really awesome, he's kind of a comedian pastor, actually. He's so fun to listen to. But he said, there's a study out that shows, how do you have a 99% chance of making it in your marriage? What are the characteristics that those couples have? And he says, they pray together every day, and they share scripture every day, and they have only a 1% divorce rate. So if you want to make that marriage really work, you got to center it around those kinds of things and that's part of communication. It's part of bringing your life to the Lord. It's part of following him. And so I think that's really the big key that makes it work, because that's the kinds of things that we do. We go out, we do that virtually every day. We go out every week on a date. Our Friday night's our date night. We go away somewhere every year and get away, even when we had kids. We often go to a bed and breakfast and go skiing for a couple of days, even down at Bluewood, which is only 60, 90 miles from here, I guess, up to the ski area.
Yeah.
And, but there were just times where it's just the two of you to go get away. You do that once a year. So I think those are things that it's that quality time that you spend together. And we just make that commitment to do that.
And I think it's important too that we have never, ever made a point of criticizing each other. Or like, I never criticize Carl in front of somebody else or behind his back, and he doesn't do that with me. We never tear each other down. We're always united together in that. I mean, that's, obviously nothing nobody else needs to know. And so it makes your marriage stronger if you're not putting your spouse down to others.
Absolutely. Well, I can't thank you two enough. I've been looking forward to this podcast for probably since the beginning of December, when I found out that you guys were celebrating your 50th wedding anniversary. And I said, you know what? These guys are going to be on my podcast, and we're going to share what made that happen for 50 plus years. So I can't thank you enough for just being a great power couple. I can't thank you enough for being my partner in business. And so there's a lot to be learned from you guys. And thank you for being everybody's grandma and grandpa in your sharing group.
Our pleasure.
Well, Roger, thank you for doing this. You're making a difference in people's lives by bringing out and having people tell their stories, because everybody has a story. I love to find out people's stories. And for you to methodically go about this is just making a huge difference.
Well,
thank you for doing that.
And it sounds like we have a couple more podcasts to do together to talk about pivoting in the health club business and just a couple other things. So we'll be doing it again shortly. Thank you, guys.
All right. Bye, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Yeah.
Friday night's date night for everybody that listens in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The Everyone Has a Story podcast is very honored and humbled to acknowledge the following sponsors. Thank you all for your loyalty and faith in the content. I want to really thank Dave and Dara Feldman at Virtues Matter, the most positive and grateful husband and wife team that helps individuals bring out the best in themselves and others with workshops, retreats, consulting, and the Virtues Card app. Maury Zelkovich at the Maury Method, the world's only brainwave entrainment engineer helping people with stress, anxiety, and so much more. Priya Kumar at Results Coaching, the executive transformation coach, providing business financial intelligence that really helps flip that switch on their profit. Jennifer and Gene Sievers at the Sievers Real Estate Team, the husband and wife team serving Pierce and Kitsap County residents with their home buying and selling needs. Eric and his superhero team at Ivy Cat Web Designs, no doubt the real superheroes of web development and design. Stephen Buller at Buller Accounting, giving business owners depth and insight to their numbers in his own unique way. Rebecca Howell at Custom Bookkeeping and Accounting, delivering trustworthy bookkeeping services since 2003. And Tim and Sadie Marlowe at BD Local Podcast Studio for the use of their studio and their expertise with the necessary production and editing to make this podcast happen.
I started singing